Hi, we are Group 30, and today we're presenting the against argument for net-centric warfare is an appropriate strategy for today's modern military forces. NCW is also known as network-centric warfare or network-centric operations. The premise for this tactic is to have an information advantage by using IT through a network of forces. It is the use of radio communication to provide central access to all forces in the field for quick decision-making by commanders. Its goal is to allow communication between all tactical teams, such as ground forces, aerial assistance, and naval defenses, where they will work as a team to accomplish a certain goal. Each team would relay the information they know to Central Command Center for decision-making purposes. There are 5 key issues with network-centric forces warfare that we will be discussing today: ethics, overdependence, security, technical errors, and cost. Going into the first issue of operator ethics, IT systems have allowed armies to deploy remote-controlled robots and drones, rather than entering the battlefield themselves. While this puts fewer human lives at risk, it also creates a disconnect between the operator of the robot and the effects of war. This is concerned that this can have a negative effect on soldiers for 2 reasons. Firstly, it can lead to increased incidents of war crimes since the robot's controller may feel less responsible for the robot's actions. When a robot controller is in a control room thousands of miles from the battlefield. On the opposite side of the spectrum, some remote controllers reportedly feel more guilt than their counterparts in the field. Drone pilots are able to take lives without ever putting themselves at risk, which has been linked to higher levels of post-traumatic stress disorder. Despite not having to see the atrocities of war with their own eyes, they still feel the same psychological effects. Going into autonomous ethics, large amounts of money are being invested in autonomous drone projects that can take off, complete missions, and return without an operator. This raises serious ethical concerns since the intent is to create drones that can kill targets and drop ordnance without human guidance. IT systems are powerful tools, but allowing them to kill a human being automatically opens up the possibility of civilian casualties. Robots cannot act to and process situations in the same way a soldier can, so human touch will always be necessary to ensure that the right action is taken. Additionally, it is unclear whether the money spent is a wise choice. Some autonomous drone projects have cost billions of dollars in research alone. With such high price tags and the ethical concerns associated with these projects, it may not be right to continue to put money in autonomous drones.
Our second issue is overdependence on IT. Network forces that rely heavily upon technology, particularly infrastructure, are exposed to significant risks that have not been thoroughly analyzed by the military intelligence community. Overdependence on information technology has enabled technological resources to be overvalued as an asset for creating effective military operations. Important military decisions cannot be always made with information-based rational analysis. This could lead to management overconfidence and counterproductive consequences. Reliance on infrastructure may be primary weakness for opponents to exploit. This situation becomes particularly hazardous if alternative ways of working are not available. When information technology becomes so critical to warfare that armed forces become incapable of fighting in a non-network fashion, any disruptions to networks could be fatal for a military. Example of potential weakness: global positioning systems. Commander of U.S. Army Air Force Space Command has described GPS as a core asset required for NCW to work. They are used in everything from targeting bombs to coordinating fighter planes and even guiding drones. Any disruptions to these networks have the potential to completely eliminate operational abilities. This could be catastrophic for armed forces and their fighting abilities. In 2007, when China developed the GPS jammer to disable its own aging weather satellites, this further proved the system's vulnerability. Our third point: security vulnerabilities. Security issues arise when NCW is used. It is difficult to efficiently transfer information between networks having different levels of system classification. Providing secure communication is very difficult. Key management for encryption is extremely difficult for mobile systems in terms of cryptography. By using radio-based systems, it would become a direct target for enemy to gain intelligence or simply disrupt the service. Enemy hackers with the necessary skills to hijack into the network would be detrimental to any operation activity. This could be viewed as a noticeable weakness by the opponent, which can be compromised if enough time and resources are placed upon it, where consequences could largely be fatal. Vulnerabilities to electromagnetic attacks on the equipment could break the communication from ground forces to central systems. Using high-power radio frequency or high-power microwave disruption weapons could bring the whole network down to eliminate any communication between forces. A possible scenario: U.S. military attacking Russia, and NCW is used to communicate an attack on a Russian base. Russia uses electromagnetic weapons and GPS jammers to break communication mid-operation. U.S. ground troops and aerial assistance waiting for instructions without knowing communication has been broken are susceptible to Russian forces, which now have an opportunity to counterattack.
The fourth point that we would like to cover is technical errors of NCW systems. Military experts claim that net-centric systems provide an effective commanding platform given complex scenarios requiring rapid responses. This belief, however, has been shown to not be true. An experiment conducted by Mats Persson and Georgios Rigas of the Swedish National Defense College showed that several different command and control systems performed poorly under a variety of conditions. The experiment in question had several individuals filling the role of commanders of increasing numbers of firefighting units. As the numbers of units and speed of decisions increased, the value of the command and control system diminished. A main problem observed during this experiment was that a key limitation of a command and control system is the capacity of the commander to handle complexity. Once the complexity of the information being provided exceeded the commander's ability to process it, it then becomes an obstacle rather than a tool. With this in mind, it is evident that under the situations that net-centric systems are implemented to improve, they actually perform exactly opposite as to what is intended. In addition to this gaping flaw in the NCW regime, other potential modes of technical failure exist. Since net-centric warfare is dependent upon the computer system it's comprised of, it has the potential to fall prey to their malfunctions. Two notable errors that have the potential of occurring to a command and control system are the occurrence of coding errors, namely the Byzantine generals problem, and hardware limitations. The Byzantine generals problem is when a compounding of errors in an algorithm occurs that has the potential to result in producing incorrect or inconsistent outputs. This kind of error has been shown to have the potential to take down an entire data center. One such example is the Amazon S3 data center, which was taken down for hours due to a small hardware error that occurred and was multiplied in the system. Another notable limitation of the computer systems employed by net-centric warfare is the growing limitations of hardware being developed to meet military needs. A primary example of this problem is given by the inability of commercial network cards to properly function under net-centric warfare scenarios. High-performance sensor programs like the systems found on military planes such as Boeing's P-8A Poseidon require hardware with the capacity to process data in high-intensity bursts. However, the new network cards being produced simply are not able to satisfy these requirements while also providing higher overall processing capabilities. The last point we would like to cover is the cost of NCW systems. There are heavy costs associated with the computing power necessary for an efficient NCW strategy for the military. A large number of servers and other hardware components and a much more sophisticated network infrastructure would be required for establishing competent NCW strategy. All this new hardware and information obtained will need more manpower to monitor information. There will be operators to monitor information, as well as more staff hired for maintenance and upkeep. This additive cost is huge, and adding it to an already bloated military budget is not an optimal strategy. In fact, the budget is in such dire condition for military, currently the money has to be siphoned from other areas of government as well as from other sectors in the military. This impacts the overall military power of the country negatively, since military is currently slashing budgets massively, and it is the smallest since World War II. The other, ever-present issue is with the constantly evolving nature of technology associated with NCW. The military must be on the leading edge of NCW technology for strategy to be effective. This requires constant training and retraining of staff and yearly costs and replacements of hardware and adapt to new doctrines. This very short life cycle for the equipment and technology means a lot of cost is associated with creating and assimilation for military use. In summary, we have identified 5 considerable areas of concern with regard to net-centric warfare. There are serious ethical concerns of giving computer systems the permission to kill humans. Overdependence on IT in warfare situations also presents the problem of the military to become unable to function without the guidance of computer systems. The security of NCW means that the network becomes a target for enemies and gives them the opportunity to take advantage of misinformation. Technical errors arising from the nature of NCW pose a risk of complete shutdown and unreliable information being generated and gathered. Lastly, the cost associated with developing and maintaining NCW systems is becoming a huge burden to the U.S. military. With these notable faults with NCW in mind, it is evident that net-centric warfare is not an appropriate strategy for today's military forces. And lastly, here are our sources.